Hey, it's Endymion, and today I want to talk about some stuff surrounding Marvel Rivals, like new leaks and moronic demands by so-called fans. Hey, that rhymed, that was not on purpose, as well as how other studios are currently falling apart at the seams, as they reap what they sow by supporting things like Sweet Baby Still. And I also want to talk about the ever-looming reality that the games industry, in its totality, is absolutely heading towards a Chinese dominant future, and whether this takeover of the industry can be stopped or if it should be at all. Let's get into it. Firstly, obviously, Rivals is just blowing up still, man. It's doing insanely well. Many are now confidently stating that this game could indeed be the Overwatch killer for real this time. Of course, fans always said the only thing that could kill Overwatch was Overwatch itself. But now, that doesn't seem to be the case, as all it took was a cool hero shooter that didn't pander to completely eat up the entire community and then some. Season 1 is right around the corner at this point, and there's plenty of new modes that are coming to the game. One of these is going to be Capture the Flag, except according to leaks, the flag won't actually be a flag. But instead, it'll be the Infinity Gauntlet that everyone who's watched Infinity War and Endgame and read the comics would obviously know it from. This mode will apparently also include some sort of mechanic involving the Infinity Stones as well. Would be cool if each team had their own gauntlet and then the flag, so to speak, was the stone themselves. And then you would collect them and bring them back to your gauntlet, to slot them in. And then the first team to fill up their gauntlet can then have a player put it on and snap their fingers, erasing the other team for a win. Just a thought, but it would be cool, but we'll see. There was also this really interesting find by this user on Reddit who posted a video, as you're seeing on screen here, showing how certain heroes in the game, from Doctor Strange, Wolverine, Magic, Star-Lord, and Venom, all have identifiable weaknesses based on the FPS of the player's machine. So as you can see, if your FPS is high, your movement isn't only more fluid, you're genuinely faster than someone else in-game with a lower FPS. This includes damage too, where enemies die faster if they get shot by someone with a higher FPS than they do. Some players have claimed this means Rivals is pay to win, as the more money you have in real life to make your computer better, or whether you play on PS5 Pro or not, I guess, somehow means you're getting an advantage, which I mean, yeah, kind of. Although I don't think this is players' faults, of course, it's the game itself, but this problem of higher FPS means more damage has always been a problem in online games already. To put the blame on each player is not really fair. Maybe Rivals needs a capped frame rate that is easily achievable, of course that being 60 FPS. Please, for the love of God, don't ever be at 30 FPS if possible. But it's wild to see how different the times are between FPS when it comes to things like damage in game. This is undoubtedly something that NetEase needs to fix before long, otherwise players with weaker hardware are going to boycott the game if they keep losing, and then they'll claim it's the FPS and not their skill, which will definitely turn into a discussion that will fall out of whack very quickly, and then everybody will of course start arguing about it. It's best to avoid that scenario if possible, so hopefully NetEase fixes that. This brings me to this post on Rival Steam forums too, that ended up getting deleted, but it was too funny not to share, and it's titled, "Gender-swapped heroes in Season 1 are necessary." Yeah, you can imagine this didn't go over too well. Here's what this user said. "Hello, I think I speak for the large community to say we don't like playing certain heroes because of them being only one gender, male or female. When the new heroes are released, we should have gender-swapped versions for each one to not discriminate against people that want to play those heroes but not their given gender. We want to play Doctor Strange, but he is too masculine for us. We want a female-swapped version with the same kit as him. This will allow everyone to play equally. Hopefully we can get this fixed for Season 1. Yeah, this will never happen ever, because of the logistics behind it, never mind the ideological nonsense too. Imagine having to cater to people like this. I mean, it could be a troll of course, but regardless it's still funny. And the thread was rightfully deleted and shadow banned into the nether realms, because I'm sure the conversation didn't give any good feedback that was worth keeping. But seriously, this can never happen. Firstly, because Rivals would need to make variant versions of every skin available now. Not to mention change the body types. Doctor Strange alone would be a nightmare to do this with. Not to mention, if they did Hulk for example, they would have to add a bra to every single character skin that he has, plus his super form too. And his Bruce Banner form would have to be changed as well, although I'm sure this sort of thing would make the 20 people out there who would unironically want this happy that are probably also communists, that have zero money themselves and will never buy a single skin or battle pass in this game, it's a good idea to avoid these things altogether. I think we can all agree. They already tried a hero shooter with pronouns and it died 2 weeks after launch, and I think people know where I stand when it comes to gender stuff like this. I think Rivals could have easily been a terrible game filled with identity politics, but it does seem at least to some degree that Disney is listening when it comes to Marvel. Star Wars, yeah, not so much. That franchise is on its own island, so to speak, when it comes to changes. But Marvel can be saved in a movie and video game sense at least, although of course Spider-Man 2 from Insomniac was not a good look for Marvel as it ruined the hero and the momentum of that game's world almost entirely. But of course things like Deadpool and Wolverine prove that fans just want movies and experiences in general that harken to the things that they love, rather than what the identity political freaks and weirdos out there are demanding instead. Rivals is a clear example of what can be achieved if you cut the nonsense and then stick to your strengths. I think this one user put it perfectly as to why they enjoy Rivals over Overwatch. Because this game is more fun and I don't have to be swarmed with they-them heroes and maps filled with rainbow flags. And they're right. Again, I doubt you'll see any of that in Rivals. Well, maybe, I don't know. Disney could ask NetEase to do some sort of celebration during Pride Month in Rivals. I hope not personally, because all that will do is piss people off, and I don't think adding a rainbow Spider-Man skin or something is a good idea. But at the same time, NetEase is Chinese, so I doubt their rules from their country would allow them to put those things into their games, regardless of the property. It's going to be a really interesting and weird dilemma to see which side caves in come Pride Month in 2025, or whatever other stupid made-up celebrations and flags that try to weasel their way in too. But I do think that what Rivals has achieved is incredible in such a short amount of time too, because again, the West is falling apart, both ideologically and in terms of their entertainment. Recently, you had a company called Heart Machine. It's an indie dev studio which was known for Hyper Light Drifter. They announced that they're launching a Patreon to now support their studio. Their latest game, Hyper Light Breaker, doesn't come out officially until 2025, but the studio is already hit with layoffs and they are bleeding money. I should probably also tell you that Hyper Light Breaker is 100% Sweet Baby infected. I mean, if you go look at their website, Breaker is right there on their homepage for all to see. The fact that the owner of the studio had to release a video via their official YouTube page pretty much just begging their fans for money to keep the company afloat, it's embarrassing and it's kind of sad to see. I mean, you would think they could lock in investments from actual investors. Well, I mean, they probably did that with ESG money, of course, like all the other ones did in 2020. But the difference here between how people supported Rivals, which defies what Heart Machine here adheres to, and what Sweet Baby does to companies is crazy. Look at these comments, man. I won't read them all, but you can see them on screen right now as I scroll through them. And it's just endless comments of people saying you shouldn't have aligned with Sweet Baby, get the modern audience to buy the game, I identify as non-binary, always love that one, it's a classic, and many more. Like, the more that I scroll, the more I can see how Gamergate 2 has had a resounding effect on everything within games. And as I've said many times, players need to make their voices heard, and it's clear that you are all doing just that. You have a game here that is the antithesis of something like Rivals or Space Marine. A game that harbors and champions everything players dislike about games these days. Like I said, their new game isn't even out yet. It comes out in like mid-January 2025. But now that people know that you're aligned with Sweet Baby and there's zero chance of you shedding that partnership away here, it's very obvious that little to no one will be buying Hyper Light Breaker when it launches. It's a shame too, because Hyper Light Drifter, from what I understand, sold pretty well. I beat that game when it came out years ago, and I thought it was fine for what it was, not really memorable or anything, but fine. I have zero interest in a sequel or anything like that though, and personally, I don't see Heart Machine surviving this at all. At best, Heart Machine lays off everyone and the founder just remains with a skeleton crew of devs, if that, and then they gotta work their way up again from ground zero after the woke-infested agenda killed their studio. Like I say so many times, all you gotta do is reject the nonsense and make games for the players, and then the real audience will show up like they always do. Rivals 2 would have been dead already had they put the pronouns of these heroes in their bio or made the women look like Naughty Dog artists drew them or something. I know the games industry has pretty much attempted for years to shed what they deem works for a new standard going forward. And by new standard, I mean uglier female characters, weak feminized male heroes, and so on, but the proof is in the results here. Every game that pushes stupidity dies, and every game that gives people what they want is thriving. For years, you would have people say there's superhero fatigue, superhero movies are over, and so on to explain the failure of these projects, but it isn't true. There really isn't any superhero fatigue. There is only a fatigue of bad products that aren't cool or fun to engage with. Rivals bucks this trend in tremendous ways. If there was a superhero fatigue, then why has the game reached over 20 million people in less than a month? I don't know, man. Doesn't sound like fatigue to me, that's the problem. It's wild to think that so many of these things that have failed or will fail in the future never had to have that reality become true, had they just realized that all the nonsense they were being fed by consultants and the sweet babies were nothing but a grift to get these companies to pay these consultants hundreds of thousands of dollars to ruin their games in order to push a narrative they deemed more important than profits or player satisfaction. The other big killer of a lot of these projects is toxic positivity. It's creating cultures within games where problems are not allowed to be called out for what they are. And in turn, this allows these problems to fester and bloat until they eventually become far too large to remove. Concord was like this. Sure, Rivals has issues too, but it does seem at least the skeleton of which Rivals operates in has enough meat on its bones that it can reasonably fix itself if any one problem becomes evidently clear that they need change. The demand to gender swap heroes is ridiculous. I'm confident it won't happen. I more so believe if Rivals wishes to continue their success, they'll keep their aim towards the golden era of Marvel Comics and ensure that each character looks and feels like their true comic book counterparts. For an example, Herman Hulst, who unfortunately runs PlayStation right now and was a big supporter of Concord, had an interview with Famitsu magazine, and in Fandom Pulse recited parts of what Herman Hulst said in this interview. But the gist of it was that Herman was coming to terms that Sony PlayStation needs to make things for players and not what they would call the modern audience anymore. And this of course ties into the fact that Sony is committed to live service games. After all, Helldivers 2 is doing what it's doing right now, and they of course want more of that. Rivals as well has been killing it on PlayStation, and Sony knows that if they want to continue this lucrative streak, they need more Helldivers and exclusive partnerships like they have with Rivals over that of Concord's. Famitsu would ask Herman Hulst, on the other hand, Concord was discontinued in about 2 weeks and the closure of 2 studios. Neon, Koi, and Firewalk Studios was announced. As the corona disaster settles down, I assume that the game's business is undergoing rapid changes. Are there any changes in your strategy for live service games and mobile games as a result of these studio closures? Herman Hulst would respond. The game business is constantly changing due to a variety of factors, including technological advances, new genres, and new ways of playing games. The one thing that has not changed, however, is people's desire for a great entertainment experience, and the focus on games continues to grow. But with that comes competition, and like many companies in the industry, we have had to make changes to our business in order to solidify a more sustainable operating base. We will continue to focus on developing live service titles along with the story-driven single-player titles that our players demand. Since live service titles are released on multiple platforms, the key to success is how to attract new players and increase the number of players. Therefore, maintaining momentum at the time of release and broad player adoption are especially important in the live service sector. It's obvious that Herman saw the writing on the wall and has realized that you can't make money with identity politically driven content anymore. Helldivers got ruined for a few months there because of woke community managers and piss-poor communication and big nerfs on viable builds in-game. It has since, for the most part, turned things around, and I think Rivals can be considered in that upper echelon of live service royalty too. Because besides the brand recognition, it's obvious that the games industry can no longer afford these massive budgets if these titles keep failing. Things that cost millions must make millions in return. Rivals or Helldivers, I have no doubt, has been insanely profitable already for NetEase and Disney and Sony as well. And with all the leaks floating around for Rivals, from Human Torch, Mr. Fantastic, and even characters like Hitmonkey and Angela coming to Rivals 2, it's clear that they have a vision for this game going forward. Whether Rivals becomes an esports game, I don't know. But like I said in my other Rivals videos, I don't personally believe chasing esports is a viable option for survival when it comes to a live service game. I think you're much better off catering to casual fans and ensuring that there's a fun and rewarding gameplay loop to keep people engaged, like Fortnite is a clear example of this. We also need to realize that when it comes to live service titles, it's almost no longer about just making one thing good, but eventually, if possible, creating the entire live service game into a viable platform going forward. Again, Fortnite comes to mind with it having an FPS mode, racing, Lego, and so on. Rivals could very easily become a Fortnite adjacent-like game if they play their cards right. Probably also helps that Fortnite, which is partly owned by Tencent, a mega Chinese company, has relations and has already released content via Fortnite to commemorate Rivals' release. I really do think that out of anything that has come out, Rivals is genuinely the closest thing we have seen to a bona fide Overwatch killer, and it's not even close. Will the hype eventually die down? Sure it will, to an extent. Like any other game, I'm sure it will. But what they're doing here is clearly the direction that many games industry teams and studios want their games to do as well. Reject the woke, embrace the based, and hearken to the golden age of gaming no matter what you do. Of course, Rivals will have content too in future movies released in the MCU as well. Mark my words, when Avengers Doomsday and especially Secret Wars and Spider-Man 4 with Tom Holland releases, they will absolutely have skins and exclusive events and cosmetics tied to these projects as they happen in real time. Rivals is uniquely positioned to cater specifically to a mega fandom in a big way, and it's really nice to see that they're not ruining the characters' looks or anything over this, so far anyway. Apparently, Rivals will respect even characters that have similarities between them too. For example, Rivals will not have a Falcon skin for Captain America, instead Falcon will be his own character at some point as well. The same goes for Iron Man and War Machine. He will eventually join the game at some point too, so I fully expect someone like Miles Morales to join Rivals too. It wouldn't really surprise me if the rumors of Miles Morales being in Spider-Man 4 end up coming true. And then Rivals could announce and then implement Miles into their game when Spider-Man 4 is getting advertised. I think we can all agree that would be a killer cross-media 4D chess move on NetEase and Marvel's part. Bring in Miles, then make his MCU outfit a purchasable thing, and then add the Spider-Verse outfit to as a cosmetic. Yeah, they'll make a lot of money. If Marvel is smart with this and doesn't let activists in, they could have their own Fortnite, so to speak. I mean, I know I'm reaching here, but let me cook. I would love a Marvel Ultimate Alliance-esque game mode with beat-em-up style gameplay with these heroes and Rivals. Imagine gaining Battle Pass XP and leveling up while fighting hordes of AIM robots or Doombots or Chitauri aliens, and you get to use all of these heroes just like you would in the Ultimate Alliance games. It would be immensely satisfying and fun. Then you can expand the mastery stuff attached to each character, and then put exclusive content to unlock by playing it. Oh yeah, I would definitely love that. There's so many cool ideas that could be done here. People would play it like crazy, even more so if it had co-op, which I mean, let's be real, Rivals already has that implemented to begin with. What I'm saying is that this game has endless potential pretty much. With an already strong core gameplay loop and base, the possibilities are quite honestly endless for what they can do, and I think it's fair to say that what Disney has on their hands here is a game that can and will likely exist for years to come, assuming they keep supporting it and ensuring that no activism gets placed inside of it. Clearly, there's a big push though, since Rivals has already confirmed it's going to partner with other Marvel-related products like Snap and more, as you can see here. They're doing everything they can to ensure this game takes off, even doing some things that are, well, weird. For example, recently people discovered you cannot say Winnie the Pooh on Rivals in-game chat. It's actually banned if you try. If you somehow don't know, this is because there were memes made about China's president who regularly gets made fun of for looking like Winnie the Pooh, and no, I'm not kidding. Is this censorship? I mean, yeah, it is, no doubt, but do I think people will care enough that this phrase is banned to stop playing Rivals? I doubt it. Chances are most of you didn't even know about this until I told you about it right now, but I do think we need to talk about the big elephant in the room as well, which is of course, China. The NetEase team are from there, of course. They have hundreds of thousands of devs eagerly awaiting to get their way into the games development industry, and they will probably be far less money to use than the Western developer salaries in comparison. There's obviously a lot of online chatter that claims that supporting Rivals will undoubtedly make China a more powerful figure in the game's world. And whether this is a good thing morality-wise in the long term, as it stands right now, what I think is happening is that games like Rivals are succeeding not because they're Chinese per se, but that they're giving players what they actually want. I've said this aplenty already, but if the West doesn't get their act together, China will eventually own the gaming industry completely. There's no doubt in my mind about that. They just keep winning. They keep giving players what they really want while the West crumbles under ideology and rot. Unfortunately for Western devs, they have been conditioned and trained from their schools to lies to believe in the mind virus. At this point, pushing for these sorts of devs to not put this stuff in their games, it's like asking a fish to unlearn how to swim. What has been implemented cannot be undone for many of these people. It's like if you're based. You cannot fathom seeing the world as a wokey woke views it. You can't fathom believing that there's a million genders and all of that. Because you were raised in reality, and when these weirdos demand you to reject what you know is objectively real for the fantasy in their brains, well, your brain then pushes back and rejects it. And it's the same way the other way around for the Western developers, and then there's China's devs, which are likely more based. And those people are even more based than most based individuals if we're being real. They completely reject and abhor the tenets and nonsense that the West is spewing. And in my opinion, all this will end up doing is strengthening the side that lives in reality, while the ones who reject it continue to fall further down. When people online discuss that Overwatch can and will defeat rivals in time, I frankly don't think so. Because it's not necessarily a fight against quality, as both games are objectively made in a quality sense. It's not the cosmetics or even the game modes that will necessarily dictate which game comes out on top. It all comes down to the baked-in political angles both of these games adhere to. Now more than ever, games have unfortunately become very politicized. Supporting one game could mean that you're pro this side. Heart Machine with Hyperlight is a great example of this. People aren't supporting them because they're relying with Sweet Baby. The quality of the product, the fidelity of its visuals, none of it matters because the principle in which it all adheres to and sits around is largely considered something unsalvageable and not worth supporting. Therefore, if it fails, it comes as no surprise due to the circumstances surrounding it. Yet with Rivals and Overwatch, it's the same. Hyperlight is like Overwatch, but Rivals is more like Space Marine 2 or Witcher 3, in how its politics or agenda is presented, which is mostly non-existent if we're being honest. The gaming industry is at a turning point where they have to choose to sink or swim. Sony may be turning things around somewhat. We'll see how that goes in 2025, but I think as my last video of 2024, even though this is coming out on January 1st, 2025, the reality is that this year has taught me that the ideologies is where these kinds of futures go to die. People are sick of the nonsense, they have become accustomed to closing their wallets in response, and no amount of Patreon begging, finger pointing, or calling someone a bigot will do nothing but keep digging the grave ever deeper still. Rivals, like others, are a clear example of where the industry is really going, towards great games with an ever-looming Chinese takeover that is undeniable no matter how you slice it. That window is closing fast, and then the industry will have to pick a lane sooner rather than later. I just wonder where all this will be come this time next year. Will the industry have listened? Will games become better, or will the entire industry be dead in a year's time from a Western ideological perspective? I guess we'll see. But it's clear whether people are demanding gender, race swapped variants or doubling down on what really works. Games will continue to be interesting to discuss and decipher in the years to come. I think we can all agree on that. But thank you for everything in 2024, for watching this channel and supporting it. I look forward to 2025 and all of the insanity that will definitely come alongside it. Thank you for watching, subscribe, have a happy new year, and I'll see you guys in the next one.